Good. Well, welcome. Yeah, we've got Isidro and Claudia and Angela here today. My name is DeAnne Berryhill. I'm a facilitator for the College and Career Readiness Standards ELA implementation and application course that you have signed up for today. We are going to be doing a lot of different activities, and I want to get started with what we want to get going on today. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I did do my introduction in Moodle, and it was nice to read some of the introductions that are already there. Thank you very much for introducing yourself. I've been with CalPro for well over 10 years at this point in time, and the CCRS are kind of my baby. I really think that this is the easiest, smartest way to work towards creating effective lessons for our adult students in particular. So I think that you'll get a lot out of this webinar today. I invite you to ask questions. Since we're a small group, we can use mics a lot, more so than the chat box. And let's go ahead and get started then. We'd like to find out a little bit more about your program area. If you can respond in the poll. We have ESL as one category, ABE, ASC, and HSC as one, and CTE, and any other program that you might be there. Okay, good. We have a good representation then. Okay. All right. Okay, so we have two ASL, 3 ABEs, and 4 CTE. Okay, very good. That's a good representation. A little bit later, we're going to be doing an activity with lesson plans, and so that works out really well to divide you up into different groups for that activity. The other activity that we'd like to do right now is deciding where you are with the implementation of a CCRS right now. You'll see some pictures of some animals down here, a monkey, a cow, a bird, a mouse, and a dog. And we would like you to fill out the phrase, implementing the CCRS in my classroom today, I feel like a particular animal listed because I was a dog when I started out, because I had a tendency to chase a squirrel on the fence, so to speak. And CCRS has allowed me to improve my focus in writing my lesson objectives and getting where I really want students to be. Okay. All right, since we're a small group today, then we've got some monkeys and some dogs. Okay. So if we could if you could just turn your mic on and share with us why you selected one of those animals. It's interesting to hear the rationale as to where people are at the beginning of implementing CCRS. Any volunteers want to go first? I told you mine. I was a dog.
Hi, this is Angela Olivas, and I feel
Yes.
like a monkey because I don't understand the CCR.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm very hopeful that today's webinar will help you get on that road. Please ask questions as we go along. Okay. All right. Isidro?
Hello. I guess I would say I'm willing to learn new tricks, I guess, do new ideas, this particular old dog. So
Okay. There are new tricks. There are definitely new tricks with this. Okay. Claudia, are you willing to share?
I would say that I feel the same way as Isidro. I started teaching a computer class, and it was a little difficulty
Mm,
with the different levels of English learners that I was teaching, and then the
right.
computer skills was a little challenging too. So I
Yeah.
had to kind of go chase different
Mm,
activities for each group, so that way they could all be participating, but at the same time at their level. So that was my
right.
challenges.
And that's an ongoing challenge, isn't it? Yeah. And it's probably not going to get, well, we can make it a little easier. Okay, with some of the skills that we can learn using CCRS. Okay. All right. Thank you all for sharing. So our objectives today for our webinar, which lasts for an hour, is to address questions you have so far. And since we're a small group, by all means, you can certainly put your question in the chat box and I will do my best to keep on top of that. Or you can simply just excuse me and ask your question aloud through your mic. We want to develop a common language to talk about the CCRS. It helps, you know, how this is a world of acronyms, and I'm all about knowing what those acronyms mean and being able to explain in simple language what it is we're actually talking about. I'll go through a quick example of unpacking the CCRS, and then in week 2, you'll have an opportunity to do that more in depth. So if you have any questions when we get to the unpacking of it, by all means, go ahead and ask so that you'll be prepared for that activity coming up in week 2. We will practice adding additional strong, effective activities to sample CCRS aligned lessons, which we will then use later on in the course to do your own. We'll work with lesson plans that are in your handout packet for today. And then we'll take a look at what the upcoming activities are for the remainder of the course. Okay, so to get on the same page, let me introduce the CCRS by Susan Pimentel. And I will mention 2 things. There's a scavenger hunt in the Moodle activity that is using this document that you can download, and it's also in the chat box if you want to download it right now. And the scavenger hunt has you go through the document and find particular information. We're going to go through some of those questions today. If you don't know the answers to those questions, don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. It's just getting you familiar with the format of the college and career readiness standards and giving you a little bit of a background on them. Were you able to download your handouts for today? Do you have those handy? Okay. Okay. I'll go over them explicitly when we get to that point. Okay. So the first thing that we want to take a look at is we want to respond to the questions in the poll about the CCRS. And like I said, if you if you haven't had a chance to look at the scavenger hunt and you haven't had a chance to look at the document, don't worry about it. Go ahead and select an answer. We'll discuss those answers after you've responded. So the first question, how many CCRS strands are there? If you're not sure, take an educated guess. Level groupings. Level groupings for ESL, question number 3. And then how many ESL levels are there in the first group, level A? Okay. All right. Good selection on question number 1. All right. So we've got, okay. Let's wait until people have their answers. Sorry, got a little ahead of myself there. Give it another minute or so. Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll. And we'll share the results. Okay, and on question number 1, those that selected 4 are accurate. That's how many strands there are in the CCRS. They are divided up between reading, writing, speaking, and listening are one strand. They go together because most of those activities, that's the 2-part component there. And language, which covers all of the language conventions. There is another section in the document, which is reading foundations, and it's in its own separate category because it is more directly tied to the Common Core. Okay, and those are often skills that can be used for lower level learners, in addition to moving into some of the reading standards for the CCRS. The other document that is out there I want to mention, but we don't cover it in this particular course, is the English Language Proficiency Standards, which really targets and scaffolds the ESL skills. And so if you're not familiar with that document, that in conjunction with college and career readiness standards gives you everything that you need to really create your focused objectives and lessons and activities for students. So there's 4 strands with reading foundations included as a separate group. And how many level groupings are there? There are actually 5, A through E. Okay, A through E. So each level has different skills described as to what a student should be able to do at that particular level. Okay, question 3, how many CCRS level groupings are used for ESL? The answer for that is that there are 4. And that is level A through D, with D being the advanced ESL, moving to level E, which is a 5th level, then puts students at the high school equivalency level. Okay. And then how many ESL levels are there within the first group? Group A. We usually say 3, which covers most of beginning literacy. And that's a little bit, it's not as hard and fast as some of the other responses, but it gives you an idea that level A does cover a lot of the skills that would target the beginning level of ESL. And once again, let me remind you that the English language proficiency standards will back up behind that. They help skills lower than level A in the CCRS. So between those 2 documents, you've got a good base for creating your lessons. Okay. Okay, so before we move on to the next question, okay, I would like to ask if you have any, do you have any questions about these categories of CCRS at the moment? Does it seem to make sense to you? Everybody good with that? Okay. All right. So we've got our basic document, the CCRS. We now want to follow up with how do clear specific standards improve student learning? Any of why bother with standards? That's a good question. Okay. How do those standards help us improve student learning? What are your ideas on that? Go ahead and open up your mic if you wish. You can also respond in the chat box. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I noticed that you're a counselor, and so being absolutely new in counseling, I think that if you look at this from the point of view of the critical thinking that is involved, and if you're advising students on their plan, their academic plan, then there is a connection there. It may not be as deep a connection as if you were writing lesson plans for something, but if you have to do any presentations, the CCRS will help you with that. It does create a benchmark and a goal for growth. Okay. And so in order to have that focus, we want to be able to unpack the standards and know exactly what they are doing. Each standard has some components to it. It has skills, which is represented by the verbs. It has concepts, which is represented by the nouns or the noun phrases. And it has a context, which usually is introduced with a prepositional phrase. Okay, that's all well and good, but what does that really mean? Let's take a look at an example and spend a little bit of time with it so that we can fully understand what a CCRS standard does. And it doesn't matter whether it's reading, writing, language, speaking, or listening. Okay, so this is taken from reading. This is anchor standard number 1. And the reason they call them anchor standards is because that general standard goes across all levels A through E. Okay. Within each of the levels, then, the skills become more specific. And if you look at the document, you'll see how that works. This is level A. And so we are looking at the verbs, ask and answer. Ask and answer what? Questions about key details. And what environment are we going to do this? We're going to do it in a text. Let me point out, especially if you're working with lower levels and even higher levels, you can do this. A text can be a picture. It does not have to be the written word. So you can show a current event news article, and you can ask your students at a higher level what's going on in that picture. What details do you see in that picture? And you're still covering the bases there. Okay, does this make sense? Use your emojis. Give me a thumbs up.
I have a
Does it?
question.
Yes, Isidro.
So I'm I've been in the education as far as I've taught in the K-8, so I understand the Common Core standards and its
Sure.
breakdown. So when I look at this particular standards that you have in place, for example, reading standards,
Mm-hmm.
Anchor 1, and you go back to how the information explains that um, you present the standards by grade by grade. K-12 standards have been bundled into 5 grade level groupings A. So student level A, which you have here, is K through 1, B, and so on, C, D, and E.
Mm-hmm.
So my concern or question, not sure if it's a question, is when you start putting in the standards to say, okay, we are looking at level A, we want to ask and answer questions about key details. When I hear level A, I'm hearing students that cannot explain themselves in English, but only in their primary language. So I guess my concern is I'm trying to grab information or have ask and answers and questions and details in a text for level A, which students have not have any foundations in English or not strong enough to respond or reply yet. That's my concern.
Okay, do you teach bilingually?
Yes.
Okay, ask them in their native language.
Okay, so I don't speak Chinese. I don't speak Croatian.
Okay, okay.
So this is a multi-level of challenges I'm looking at, which is
Wow.
fine. Where I'm adapted as a teacher, I
Right,
have no
right.
problem. But I'm just trying to relate that what you have as a foundation is not exactly applicable
Mm-hmm.
to the level of the student's understanding yet. It will get there. I
Sure.
think A and
Sure.
B and C will eventually be met, but
Yeah.
there's got to be something that's a pre level to the A that's going to help
Yeah.
create the foundation to get to A.
The English language proficiency standards might be a good choice in your situation. Um, the other thing that I would want to find out is in terms of placement, have these students finished your ESL program? Have they tested out of ESL?
No.
Okay. Okay. Then you might want to introduce CCRS standards when those students have a little bit more grasp of the English language, unless you can actually address it in their first language.
Okay, so
Um,
being that said, when do you apply this particular standards at their third year when they have met on the CASAS exam that they're at a 210, 220, 230 level?
um, that is a really good question. And I think that I would do that when I've built enough of a scaffolding that the students would be able to handle that task. You can actually, Adria, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to be more present visibly. I think what you're saying makes sense, Deanne. I would also suggest that, you have mentioned already that about the English language proficiency standards. And Isidro, I don't know if you've worked with those standards as well. But they do, as Deanne said, one, I think the way you put it was they sort of almost like backfill, but it is the ELP standards will kind of provide what we often call this like language lift that sort of fills out or fills in um, what's happening in those lower levels, level A, level B, but the lower levels of ESL are sort of supported within, especially the level A, within the ELP standards. So it's kind of a separate conversation, and we actually are doing a whole additional class about it, familiarization course for those standards that starts next week. But just knowing that that's a tool, and then maybe we can provide some additional resources or comments about that separately, if that works.
Mhm.
No,
Isidro, with that, can I
I
just
don't
ask you,
understand.
like,
I don't get because I'm looking at your page. What page is this on your template? 21. So I see the Common Core bands, and I
Mhm.
see where you have a different variety of assessments based on either the levels or the years. So I have students that are supposed to be an A should be coming in at least a kindergarten, first grade level reading, when in their
Mhm.
classes they can't even get to an A yet.
Mhm.
So I'm just trying to, illustrate that as great as this standards are for students that understand English and
Mhm.
can follow the standards, we still have to build that foundation from the beginning to get to A. And that's what I
Mhm.
don't see here. So I'm just trying to make sure I
Mhm.
relay this information to my staff, to the teachers, that this is
Mhm.
a guide in which you can follow if you're at a basic, high, basic,
Mhm.
or a high level group of students. You can follow these particular lesson plans and these particular standards to help guide your lessons and what to look for. And hopefully we see some comparisons and results and growth in the CASAs. And that's the other question. Is it aligned to the CASAs exams where they
Yes,
students
it is.
growth? So there's a lot of questions I have. I
Yeah.
apologize for intervening, but my
Oh,
first question is how do we get to A if they don't have that A foundation
exactly.
yet?
Exactly. For us, we with our assessment, they have to score at least 200 to be in this category, level A, on the CASAS. We use the CASAS, and it is aligned with the National Reporting Service as well. So it's a great start. And even if you could my last suggestion would be modeling
Yeah.
with a student who does have sufficient language skills, and having a picture in particular and having them point to different things and have that discussion with that student. And another student may not be able to respond at that point, but they will eventually through that modeling with another student. So I hope that helps out a
Thank
little
you.
bit. Okay. Okay. So you just, what a beautiful segue to the next slide. What is the value of unpacking the standards? We want to be able to identify specific skills or learning targets that help us focus our attention. We want to be able to address the need for adequate complexity of texts and tasks for students. The focus is complexity is one of the key shifts in CCRS, is getting in to do deeper on our content rather than, we want to go um, an inch wide and 6 inches deep as opposed to 6 inches wide and an inch deep, is part of the game plan there as far as the document being put together. And to also be able to plan that scaffolding that you mentioned is absolutely necessary to be able to help students move on in their skills. So if we know what the standard is asking for, then as teachers, then we can develop objectives to match what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. So let's take a look at what makes strong, effective objectives. What are your thoughts on strong, effective objectives? What are you looking for when you make those, when you write out your objectives? Anybody? I look for, can I measure it? If I'm going to ask students to do something, am I going to be able to measure it? Other things that we want to look for is we want to have it student-centered and relevant to the needs and interests and goals of our adult students. Adult students come to us with a lot of experience, and even if they don't have English skills under their belt at the moment, we can try and tap into their interests and needs and goals and what they want to accomplish. Most want to get better at English. I want to reference in the upper right-hand corner of your slide, you see handout page 2 to 5. In the handout you have for this webinar, you've got two handouts on strong, effective lesson objectives and activities and practices that you can refer to. So the information that's on the slide is also contained in your handout. It also gives you a checklist for strong, effective objectives and evidence-based activities and practices. That's all of the focus in this complexity and depth, is that so students can develop the critical thinking skills that they need for the jobs of today and tomorrow. We want to be sure that our lesson elements include it's appropriate to the student's level, as you pointed out very well, Isidro. We want it to be clear, simple, student-friendly language. And as I mentioned, we want it to be observable and measurable. So that's what we want with our strong, effective objectives. What kind of practices and activities can we implement that will help us do that? We can contextualize for student interest and authentic usage. We want it to be student-oriented, real-world performance-oriented tasks so that they can take something they learn in class and go practice it out in the real world. And we want to be sure to scaffold, to build on prior knowledge, prior lessons, increasing their skills as we go. And here, again, I'll mention, we want lots of modeling, either by teachers and or teacher and student, or students and students, so that those who need to get a little bit more experience in the classroom environment and using English can have that modeling available to them. Okay. So again, in your handout, we have sample lesson plans, a ESL lesson on page 6 to 9, ABE on 10 to 15, and ASE 16 to 25. We're going to do an activity in a breakout room, and we want to have enough time to do it. So we'll get started in just a moment. Your your directions are when you get together with your group, okay, um, skim the lesson with your group. Take a look at the whole lesson. Then focus in on a lesson segment you would like to add an activity. And we are hinting you to take a look at the presentation piece or the practice piece. Practice piece works well because you can always add an additional activity to that particular lesson that matches up with the objective. However, you do want to review the objectives as well because you might think that that needs to be revised a bit, and you can certainly do that. Then what you'll do is outline the new activity. You don't have to have all the details of the activity, but have kind of a big picture idea of what you're going to do with that activity and how that ties into the objective. And then you'll select one person in your group to share out to the rest of us when we come back from the breakout rooms. Okay, so let me ask you, do you have access to, does everybody have access to your handouts? And you can self-select in the group, and Adria and Maria will work on putting those groups together, and they can let me know when they're ready to go with the breakout rooms.
Thank you. Thanks, DeAnne. Thank you for noting about the breakout rooms. So as you said, the rooms will be self-select, meaning
Mm-hmm.
you'll see the ability to choose, and there will just be two rooms. You're a small
Okay.
group. But what we've done is create one room for ESL and one room for we're going to put ABE, ASE, CTE. We know that those of you who selected one of those answers kind of selected multiples because of the multiple hats situation. So
Yeah.
we'll essentially have an ESL room and a room for other,
Mm-hmm.
and not to other you. You know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
just other.
Yeah.
And DeAnne, maybe for the benefit of that room, for that group that's doing ABE, ASE,
Mm-hmm.
CTE, that group, if you could describe a little bit about what's going on with those two lesson plans so that that group can make an informed choice about which plan they want to look into.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Okay.
guessing you might suggest the ABE lesson, but I'm going to let you field that.
Um, yes. For this particular activity, I would definitely recommend the ABE lesson plan. The reason being is that it's a shorter lesson plan, and it is a little bit more focused than the ASE plan. The ASE plan, by all means, take a look at that because it is interesting, but it is a long-term lesson plan. And it with a 10-minute breakout room, it might be a bit difficult to figure out where you want to go with that. So I would go with sample lesson plan 2, ABE. The lesson title is On Golden Pond. And I think that makes it easy for that group to work with. And then the ESL lesson plan, the other group can work with. Okay, any questions about this activity? So we're just getting our feet wet with, okay, here's the scenario. You've been doing a lesson plan on something, okay? And you're going to sit down and you want to do that lesson plan again, but you've been introduced to the CCRS and you want to kick it up a notch. And so that's basically what we're doing is we're doing a little bit of practice on taking a piece of a lesson plan and seeing how we can improve it a little bit. Okay. Are we good? Any questions? Clarifications? Are we good to go? Okay.
Come back.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Okay, so we had two groups. My little robot, sorry. So we have two groups to share out. Does one group want to volunteer? Okay. Let's go with the ASE CTE group that did the ABE lesson. What do we have going there? What activity would you add to that one? Who's your spokesperson? Just click on your mic and let's see here. That would be Claudia, Angela. What do you think?
Sorry, this is Angela. I didn't really understand what the lesson was. I could see it's on Golden Pond, but you wanted us to add an activity that would cover one of the CCR anchors.
Yeah, add an activity that would just add to the lesson plan or change it up a notch. Okay, so did you look at the presentation and practice? Was there
Uh,
something else?
yes.
Was there something else in the practice that you could have added?
No, it's on speaking, right?
Mm-hmm. It's on, yeah,
Um,
it's on the discussion process. Is there one more step in that discussion process that you could have added that would make an additional practice for the students?
mm, I know it's ABE, so they speak English, which is a little
Mm-hmm.
more helpful than some
Yeah.
for ESL. Um, no, I mean, I for them to engage with each other about what they didn't like about the movie or what they liked or why
Mm-hmm.
they would marry somebody, I think it's a good conversation. So I
Mm-hmm.
would think that, their conversation skills are pretty good. It's the writing skills that need help. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, not even an essay because that's what they're learning to do.
Yeah.
So for
But
me, answering the questions, like to practice it, I think
okay.
would be good.
Maybe
But
it
just go ahead.
I was gonna say maybe a different way of practicing or a different practicing with different people because their goal, the objective was to use key phrases to express one's own ideas and express acknowledgement of other ideas and follow the positive rules for collegial discussions. So we don't
Mhm.
need to go to the writing unless we were going to do a complete additional lesson plan.
Mhm.
But there perhaps for the practice um you could have them do, maybe you could have them practice with another topic or document and
Okay.
have a second practice that mimics what they have done. So they get to apply their skills to something additional besides the Golden Pond story,
Okay.
which would then allow the teacher to pull that together and show them that the skills are the same, even if the material's a little different.
Okay. So
Yeah,
did these students read the book or did
they did.
they
Yeah.
read the book and they saw the movie?
Yeah. The story was and it was in their Challenger Book 7, and that's discussed in the warm up and review piece. What I recommend is after the webinar, go ahead and take a look at the lesson in more detail and see if that makes sense to you.
Okay.
Okay,
Great. Thank you.
you're welcome. Isidro, what did you decide to do with the ESL lesson?
I just added a sequence sentence. I returned to school because, or my summer, or I hope to learn something. I hope to learn this because, or something down the line. And then I wanted to take that opportunity to support students with their language skill building. So if there's a pronunciation or misspelling, kind of create a word bank on the wall to allow students to see and practice. So it kind of shares along the line of sequencing and group
Mm-hmm.
and also reading and writing as well.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. So this activity was just, I know it was kind of a jump in and sink or swim type of situation here. But after the webinar, do take a look at the lesson plans, look at the objectives, see how you feel it matches up with everything else going on in the lesson. Because one of the activities you'll be doing toward the end of the course will be actually adding an activity to a lesson. Okay, so it's really, really good practice. And once again, it can be to extend the depth of the objectives in the lesson, or it can be a springboard to something else that would be an extension of the lesson that you're looking at. So does that help clarify? So this was just a presentation practice for you to get your feet wet on how to not only look at the CCRS, but to then look at a lesson and say, okay, now that I know a little bit about the CCRS, what can I do to improve or extend this lesson? Okay. Okay. Any other clarifications or questions at this point on that? Okay. So we want to kind of wrap things up with where are you now in relationship to CCRS? Are you still the same animal or have you changed? Have you decided you're a different animal at this end? Which of the animals reflects the way that you feel now after playing around with the CCRS just a little bit? Okay, everybody, we've got a dog. Okay. And let me, before we go to looking at what the next steps are, let me just say that it it can be overwhelming to take all of this in what seems a very short period of time. But let me caution you on that. Um, I introduced the CCRS reading standard number 1. You could work with that standard and look at it through the different levels and see where it's going. And you could play around with, okay, if I started with my students at level A, I could do this kind of an activity. At level B, that might look like this. At level C, that might look like this. And if you can get that practice in with just one standard from one strand, it'll work the same way for all of the anchor standards in all of the strands. So don't let yourself be too overwhelmed. Okay. It can be got brought down to bite size so that you can really get a good grasp of it. Because once you have a grasp of it, I guarantee you will realize that that's the way to work smart when you're doing your objectives and lesson plans. Okay, monkeys and dogs still. Okay. Any change or are you still kind of in that same frame of mind, Isidro?
No, I'm still that kind of dog character. I was just going through it, sniffing it through, and you know, digesting it for better understanding, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, Claudia?
I changed to monkey because I'm curious now. I'm kind of hoping to learn new information that will
Okay.
better my lessons.
Okay. All right. Angela?
Yeah, I changed to a dog because now I'm wanting to get the meat off the bone.
Good job.
That
I like
makes
that.
sense. Okay.
I like that. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Great wrap up. Great wrap up, you guys. Okay. Our next steps I want you to be aware, and I want to caution you on this. Week one is, let's see. Yeah, there we go. Week one is heavier on the work than the rest of the weeks. Okay. And that's because there's so much background information that's needed for CCRS. So stick with it. Okay. Stick with it. And please communicate with me if you have any questions about the material. The scavenger hunt is a good one to do if you haven't done it so far, because it tells you to find things in the document itself of the CCRS. Okay. And the also it's a self-check. The answers are there, posted there in Moodle. Once you fill out your answers, then you can check and see what you're on task with and what you might need to look at a little more carefully. And then week two only has one task that you have to do because we want to allow you time to gather materials, reflect, and prepare for the following weeks. And then week three, we want you to get started on week three before we meet again for webinar two. We'll be talking about depth of knowledge and how that ties in with the CCRS. Okay. So before we close, we're a minute over. Any clarification? By all means, communicate with me. Any questions that you have, I'll be more than willing to spend time with you and talking about the CCRS and how they work. Okay.
I had a question about getting a hard copy of the CCRSs.
What I did, I downloaded it and printed it off. It's quite a number of pages. If you print everything from, I did the whole thing, including the math. I'm looking at 130 pages, I think it is. But I I am glad I did that. I three-hole punched it. I put it in a notebook, and I've written all over it in the last 10 years. I was looking at it the other day and I thought maybe I need a new one because I've made all kinds of notations on different pieces of it. So, but you can download it on your desktop and just have it there to refer if you want.
And the standards have nothing has changed since 2013. Is that
That's correct. So it would be the latest, greatest. Okay. All right. Okay, well, thank you for staying over a couple minutes here. Our next webinar will be Tuesday, July 28th from 1 to 2 p.m. I'll see you in Moodle. And again, I will say for the last time, please ask your questions. That's what I'm here for. Okay? You're a great group, and I look forward to working with you in Moodle.